The Devil and Us, a memoir of you and me. Everything you think you know about evil is wrong. Well, good day, ladies and gentlemen. It is Sunday, the 21st of April, 11:27 a.m. my time. And I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Telemaker Review. We're going to get back to The Devil and Us and Chapter 4, The Devil, which I'll finish up this week probably. And then we'll move on to some of the really interesting stuff like 1947 and the explanation of an explanation of what's going on in this world. Okay, so a little bit of theology and philosophy and rational observation, okay, to give you a context. So there's a grand division between nature and man. Okay, we're a product of nature, there's no doubt about it, but there's something not quite right about us. We sit atop nature. And this is a commonly held belief in religious scriptures all over the world. And it is correct by natural law. You could suggest bias because, I mean, all scriptures are written by human beings. So why not, given that nothing else is submitting a thesis in writing, why not put yourself at the top of creation? Why not just say that we're better than everything else here, more evolved, more conscious, more aware? And for the most part, it's true. You know, um, there is sentient life here, but it doesn't contest. It doesn't present itself to everybody. Um, and those who intimate contact with this sentient life are often regarded as insane, right, or crazy. But that's the overt rationality that we live within in our time, and that's what it is. It's the overt rationality. Now, there's been some really good stuff that's come about through the scientific method and the rationality of the 20th century explosion in technology. It is good to be reasonable. And it has occurred to me that as I, philosophize on these podcasts, a very disciplined person who has succeeded in the academic world, a PhD or something like this, could look upon some of the things I'm saying and correctly conclude that, if we all lived the way you're suggesting, Bruce, we would slip into superstition again. And that's true. So you do need the mind. You do need to be able to rationally observe things. You do need that Marcus Aurelius stoicism, where you say to yourself, what is this thing? Just in and of itself, what is it? And don't project any of your ideas onto it. Just look at it, meditate upon it, and say, what is this thing? Okay? So superstition arises when people live in a culture that used to have a connection with the other side, a demonstrable connection, a shamanic or pagan or some other way. And the things that they were taught were not required to believe because there were examples, whether it be dream or, there's certain communal mystical experiences or multidimensional experiences that tribal people can have together because of the unique frequency of consciousness they create as a tribe. Okay, the probably the most successful tribe in the world is the Jews, and the Jews are a tribal people. Okay, they are a tribal people. They live like us. Jerusalem has Starbucks and all the amenities of the modern world. They ape or mimic the democratic legislation of Western nations, you know, but they're tribal. Okay, those are a tribal people. I'd say that the only people on the planet who've been successfully detribalized are white Christians. And I'm not sure detribalization is such a good thing because there's no common consciousness connection to form defensive units when you're under attack. And we're under attack now. Okay. And it's a scapegoating, by the way. What's being done now is a scapegoating. So the traveling through the world and colonizing people, I mean, white people didn't do that. White governments did that. White bankers did that. White aristocracy did that. White religious institutions like the Vatican did that. If you need a primer on this, rewatch the incredible 1985 movie, The Mission, with Jeremy Irons and Robert De Niro and Liam Neeson, who play Jesuits in a mission in the Brazilian rainforest. And it's just an incredible insight into what this colonization was. And was it wrong? Yes, it was absolutely wrong. Okay? Absolutely wrong. There is no authority that any religious institution has to go to another part of the world and shut down their expression with the other side, even if it's more limited than yours, even if yours is more evolved. It doesn't matter. That's what they apprehend at this moment. And if you take away that cosmology from them without demonstrably substituting something more magnificent and splendid experientially, not through the transfer of a doctrine like the Bible, but experientially. So if Christ himself were to have shown up at a Brazilian tribe, just appeared in the middle of the jungle and started teaching them, they would have interpreted those teachings correctly and become more Christian than this farce that we call Christianity today, which is the furthest thing from Christianity you could imagine. Never met a Christian in my life. Now, I believe if you truly lived every to the letter, you truly lived the protocols that Christ gives in the Gospels, you would have a good chance of attaining God consciousness in your lifetime. But the deprivation and suffering would be mind-boggling. It would be, and I think St. Francis of Assisi is an example of an illuminated person, despite the Catholic system. And what happens is when somebody lights up, the Vatican goes in there in Europe, when somebody lights up with spiritual ability and insight and prophetic dreams or stigmata, Vatican goes in there and starts their PR, their public relations campaign. Okay, and I will continue to make this statement as long as I'm podcasting. When you have a spiritual experience, it's yours. It's not the religions, it's not the guru you're studying under, it's yours. Okay? Maybe something about the culture you're studying influenced it or brought it about. But one of the mistakes I see
then
people
there's the
making
tendency to
is
associate all
let's take the
spiritual
case of
growth
an
with the church or
alcoholic
the
who
religion,
starts going to
which is an
12-step
error.
meetings, and in tandem with
Okay.
that and searching for his higher
It's
power,
like
decides to become
yours. You own it.
a
Nobody
Christian
can
and
take that
decides to
away
start
from
going
you,
to church.
and you should own it. Don't give it to anybody.
It's your experience. It's your growth. You can thank people who helped you, and you'll end up with a list so large that there's just too many people to thank in the end. Okay? So, I mean, it seems pretty obvious that we have a self-awareness that no other animal seems to have. We have the ability to communicate through verbal utterances and the organization of sound. And we've codified these sounds into symbols we call letters, and we write it all down in a written language. And that is our evidence primarily that we sit atop nature, is the way we're able to organize and communicate with ourselves and each other. And no other animal in nature seems to have this ability. So we say in spiritual circles that yes, man sits atop the creational pile in this 3D reality on this planet. But we don't do it very well. And we're not good stewards and spiritual representatives to round off this experience on the planet at all. Okay? Well, what does it mean to sit atop nature? It means, for the most part, that nothing preys upon us. There are animals that we've had to contend with as we've expanded into wild areas. Sure, there are stories about the grizzly bear hunters along the West Coast all the way up into British Columbia during the gold rush, because the grizzly bears were very territorial, but we dealt with that. We thinned the population and we continued to mine gold. So anywhere we go, nothing can block us except other human beings, okay? You still hear the occasional story about shark attacks or an attack by bees or some other natural phenomenon that I guess we could sort of lump into predation. But they're very rare. Animals leave us alone because we mystify and frighten them. There's something unique about a human being on this planet. We are of this nature, though. Don't ever forget that. We can see the evolutionary patterns in the mammalian life forms. Okay. I always go back to this point. It's not my point. It's delimited by Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. And the Tao Te Ching said, I can't remember if it was the Tao Te Ching or Zhuangzi's inner chapters, but one of the Taoist texts says that the final evolutionary stage on the planet is the 7 orifices above the neck. So the mouth, the 2 nostrils, the 2 eyes, and the 2 ears. Now, cats have that, dogs have that, bears have that, you know, almost everything has it. And the final step, that mammalian incarnational pattern is a series of incarnations. And then the final stage of that is standing erect, being a human being. Okay? That's the final stage of that. So we're at the very top of that. And our spine stands straight up like a tree stalk. Okay, and so we're reaching for the sun just like a plant. And this is the bipedal humanoid on the planet. And we are the apex of the creative process on this particular planet. Okay. Now, nature is occupied by a near endless cycle of predation. Okay. Everything is preyed upon and everything preys upon something else. Insects derive most of their nutrition from inside the insect kingdom. They also eat from plant life. We see this in the leafcutter ant colonies, and we see it in the pollinating insects. Reptiles prey upon smaller reptiles and mammals that they're able to eat. Field mice, rats, and things like this. Frogs subsist on the insect world for the most part. Spiders do a hefty job in keeping the insect world in check. When we come up to the larger mammals, we see wolves attacking caribou and eating rabbits. And in the more northern climates, they can subsist on small ground rodents like rats and moles and mice, but they've got to eat like 50, 100 a day to make their energy needs. Now, the one common thing in all of this is that nothing in creation derives its energy from outside the natural world. Every manifestation of life is a temporary allotment. And in many instances, only to sustain the life of something higher up the food chain. Now, we can call this the law of economy, okay? Now, if we conceive of nature as a single entity, we see that it's self-regulating, self-governing, and always in balance. The various insects and animals and plants that accentuate nature are like cells in the body of nature as a whole. And their job is to perform a function, and then they fall away, just as a human being discards cells every 7 years. Now, through the lens of malignant sentiment, nature can seem brutal. But the ugliness is the malignant sentiment, which only occurs in us, the bipedal mammal. We live in a time where childless urbanites will spend thousands of dollars for care and operations for a pet. I'm not criticizing it. I mean, I love my animals too. You know, my last dog died of cancer, and I gave him 2 operations before we finally let him go. The cancer came back the 3rd time. And so this has become very popular, like spoiling pets, and all the while eating meat and never once considering a pig or a cow is more intelligent and sensitive than their condo dog, which never really gets to be a dog. So, nature is perfect. Okay, it's absolutely perfect. We know that nature is perfect because it never lies. It always tells the truth. If the natural world beneath humanity operates as an endless cycle of predation, what does that suggest about our own nature as humans? Why would we be set atop this predation, untouched by it? Everyone has heard the expression, the law of the jungle, which I just aptly explained through predation and the natural balancing that nature has at its disposal. It's like one whole thing that always stays in balance. If any one species becomes too dominant, then they'll run out of food and begin to starve, and the balance will be restored. There are very few things in nature that can be thrown away. There was a remarkable study done on Yellowstone National Park and the reintroduction of wolves. Fascinating. If you can see that on YouTube, you can just do a search basically on what I just described there. You'll probably find it. And biologists were able to show that the entire ecosystem benefited by the return of the wolves, including the river. It was an extraordinary insight into the ecosystem of one national park in the United States that demonstrated that nature operates with the precision of a highly crafted watch, not losing a second of time over the life of a wind-up. The only thing that can be taken away from nature without any real consequence to the system is us, human beings. Okay, people don't really realize that, how special it is to be a human being, but at the same time, how disposable it is. So think about it from the position of an evolutionary biologist, okay? Now, evolution is bunk, by the way, okay? Sorry, Brett Weinstein, Eric Weinstein, but look, it's the consciousness that brings about the evolution, okay? So consciousness is malleable. It can adapt itself to present a form that will survive, okay? It's like incidental mysticism. This is the true definition of evolution. We're constantly evolving, okay? And it's our consciousness. So we manifest. So if we're put in an environment where we need something and we keep through our consciousness asking for it, wordlessly or otherwise, but through our intent, our heart, and our desire, we keep asking for it, over time, you'll get it. Because the divine principle has no option but to give you anything you ask for. They may say, well, I asked for $1 million. Why didn't I get it? Well, that's a whole separate topic, okay? You'll get what you need, not necessarily what you want, but very many times you can get money if you ask for it, but I would not recommend it because you're borrowing against a system that has a very, very strict sense of accountability. And you will have to pay something for that. Okay. So human beings are not needed by the natural system. We're an adjunct. Okay. We sit atop of nature, and nothing in nature preys upon us, and nature can do without us. What an interesting position when you think about it. We're royalty. Every single human being is royalty in the natural system. Nothing preys upon us. And we have no responsibilities here other than to procreate and to keep human beings alive. But we don't have any natural responsibilities here. Spiders have natural responsibilities. Snakes have natural responsibilities. Sharks have natural responsibilities. Now, that's a really important thing to stop and think about, that nature can do without us. And it raises a very, very interesting question, the central human question: what are we doing here? What are we doing here? The entire natural world could exist without us. Without a single human being on this planet, the world would be fine. Okay? We don't have any responsibilities to nature. In fact, we end up doing more damage to nature than benefit. Okay? So what are we doing here? How are we so aberrant to the entire system? What is the nature of this level of evolution where you get this elementary sense of self-identity? Basically,
what the Abrahamics call the I am identity. I am. Okay, that itself is an illusion, but that's part of the evolution of consciousness. But you're going to start with the I am, or some form of philosophical correlate, like Rene Descartes' I think, therefore I am. Okay, but that as well is incorrect from a spiritual perspective. You are in spite of the fact that you think. Okay, so this is the question. What are we doing here? You know? Now, the absence of man would not affect the functioning of nature and its balance or continuity in any way. And we take the devil with us because he exists nowhere except within our adoration. Okay? You want to kill the devil, kill the human race. The devil comes with the human race. It's an adjunct of our consciousness as we go through our evolutionary process. Okay? The human being is not free from the world of predation, though. I've not misled you, but I'm just leading you to a realization. It's just that all of our predators, all of our predation takes place within us, okay, which makes us very, very unique. The inner life of a human being is what determines everything. We do things completely irrational based on self-concept, like ego and pride. No other animal does that. Okay, so we bring a lot of liability to this environment, a lot of liability because of the elementary egotistical I am construct. Okay, at least what we call civilization does. Native societies sort of exist atop nature and with nature. Very interesting how they understand that living within nature is absolutely vital for a fully functioning human being, a properly functioning human being. Okay, we're meant to be in the natural world. This is, I don't think, can be debated. Cities are not our natural place. Every time we start building up and going into these mega civilizations, they rise and they fall. The Quebecer in the Talamanca Mountains have been going continuously as one cultural expression for longer than the Chinese or the Jews. Think about that for a moment. Okay, so have the Aborigines in Australia, so have the Nunavalik in the Arctic Circle in Canada. Same culture, same mythology, same diet, tens of thousands of years. Why is it in our civilized world we can't go that long? And the cycle of empire is getting much shorter now, much shorter. So America had it after World War II, or shared it with the British, we'll say. So let's say 1945, about 79, 80 years we've had it, and we've lost it now. Okay, everybody is saying China's going to pick it up. China will lose it in half the time. China won't even last 80 years. They'll lose it in 40. Okay, and it's not their fault. It's just the level of scrutiny brought to things now through social media and private journalism, podcasting. It's very difficult to get away with anything now. So they're not going to get away with it. And if they try to force everything, the rest of the world will turn on them. So it's a very delicate position. China, quite frankly, was better off being the second. You know, I think when they step up to the boss's chair, they're going to regret it, and they're gonna say, "Wow, we were better off interacting with these societies." But leadership is very expensive. Leadership is very costly because you have to demonstrate moral leadership. And I seriously doubt the Chinese will be able to do that because, how would I put this? The Chinese are an amoral people. Okay, now this is important. So you got to understand the distinction between immoral and amoral. Okay? What is the distinction between immoral and amoral? Sorry. Amoral versus immoral. Choose your words. Both have to do with right and wrong, but amoral means having no sense of either, like a fish. But the evil immoral describes someone who knows the difference, doesn't care, and says, I'm going to do it this way, either way, right? So immoral is more grievous than amoral. But the Chinese are an amoral people, and they don't bring moral reasoning to anything. Okay. So when they're put in charge of things, we're going to see a tremendous dilapidation of the resources on this planet because they're like cutter ants. Okay. Now, this may sound racist. I lived in Taiwan for 2 years, from 92 to 94. 我会讲国语. I speak Mandarin. I know of what I speak. This is firsthand knowledge. There's not going to be any environmental awakening in the Chinese consciousness. They don't give a shit. Go to China. Look at their rivers. Okay? You'd rather bathe or swim in a vat of acid. They're absolutely disgusting. Okay? The level of pollution in their cities. And they just live with it, you know? And a lot of the aping or mimicry of our civilization, our modalities of architecture and construction, the materials we use, the box, the high-rise box, right? The condo box. Everybody's following what we started to do. And as it goes out into these societies, it either works for some, but for the vast majority, it doesn't work. Like when you go to India, I spent a month in India in 2011 and 2012, went through, Christmas and New Year's in India. I was there for a Sikh wedding. I landed in New Delhi and then went all the way up to the Pakistani border at Amritsar. And I guess that was about, 400 or 500 kilometers, the province of Punjab. Fascinating experience, but I noticed that when a lot of people bring our stuff in, like the combustion engine and stuff, the damage it does to their societies is overwhelming. Like you can't even breathe in New Delhi. Like wearing a mask is a perennial phenomenon in New Delhi. A lot of people, same thing in big Chinese cities. You see it all the time. I saw it in 1992 and 93 living in Taiwan. People would go by on a scooter and they'd have a face mask on. No pandemic, no medical orders, nothing. It's just they don't want to be breathing in all the pollution from all the automobiles, all the soot. It can get to a point where cities can get so dense and so dirty that you can get home at the end of the day after being in a city and you can literally just scrape a layer of skin off your body with a wet cloth and that skin will be black. Okay? You got to either clean or change your screens every 6 months in Taipei, Taiwan, because the soot is so omnipresent that it will fill the gaps in on the screen over time, and it'll just be black, no light coming in. That's how dirty it is. Okay? And you got to ask yourself, why do people want to live this way? And I don't know, maybe they don't know any better, you know? I prefer to live in nature, and probably, as I keep repeating on my show here, the Talamanca Review, eat eggs from a chicken up here with a tangerine orange. Like, why would you live anywhere else? Well, I think what really keeps people living this way is ego. I think it's just straight up ego is what it is. Okay? Like they get locked into their identity, their sense of self-importance and who they are in that society. And look at the way people hold on to their titles and the way they let you know very subtly by the clothes they wear and the cars they drive, what their status is, how much money they make. Okay? It's disgusting. But that's the human race right now. And it's not going to get any better. All right? So we are the adjunct to the natural system, human beings. We sit on top of nature and nothing in nature preys upon us and nature can do without us. The absence of man would not affect the functioning of nature and its balance or continuity in any way. And we'd take the devil with us, as I already said. So all our predation takes place within us.
It takes place within the spiritual realm, inside of us. The predators we have to worry about are spiritual beings and principalities commissioned with our destruction. Okay? And this is the price you pay to be a human being. So you transcend the predation of nature, but an internal predation commences. You can call this demonic, you can call this whatever you want to call it, but to live correctly as a human being, you have to think and feel correctly. Otherwise, predators will emerge in your consciousness. You ever seen that guy on the street, the homeless drug addict, talking to the air, banging his head against the wall, having a heated argument with nobody physical? He's being preyed upon. Okay, we call it mental health in the 20th and 21st century. It's spiritual. Anything to do with what's going on inside you is spiritual. The images in your head are the spiritual realm. Okay? People get this, oh, my third eye. Well, what does it mean when your third eye opens up? What does it mean? Okay? If you can imagine anything, your third eye is open. All you need is the discernment to know what's you and what's coming in from another dimension or another being. Okay? And you know this by frequency, the intensity and clarity of the image, and other things as well. And it helps to be able to go into a meditative trance state and sort of put the waking mind to sleep. But that's all your third eye being opened is being able to experience a reality inside your head. Okay? And realizing that all reality is inside you, and that you're a projector bringing your own circumstance into the world. So the human world and the human game is infinitely more dangerous than the animal world and its simple model of predation for consumption. In the end, it's all a game, though. But until you figure it out, it's terrifying. That's why everything a human being does is shrouded in fear. And where our enemies are not necessarily rooted in the natural system, they're absolutely rooted in the supernatural system. Okay? Now, darkness itself is responsible for nothing except its own existence. It pretty much keeps to itself. We don't understand what light is, and we don't understand what darkness is collectively, the way we speak about it publicly. But public discourse is the most degraded form of discourse. That's where all the propaganda, the compromise, diversity, equity, inclusion, whatever bullshit your society's living, it's going to be in the public narrative. The more attached to the public narrative you are, the more corrupted you are. Okay? Sorry, but it's true. We certainly don't understand the co-creation and coexistence of the two, light and darkness. Light and darkness are the original siblings of creation, the original Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel might even be a personification of it, but I don't think that's what Cain and Abel means. And I don't like to use Hebrew scripture as reference because nobody knows it but the rabbis, and they're not sharing it with anybody. So don't think you know, because you don't. Because there's just so many layers and codes and all this crazy crap in that shit. It's not direct at all. And I mean, there may be reasons for that, so maybe I should just shut up about that. Light and darkness are the original siblings of creation. They're two brothers, okay? Two brothers that emerged after the process of creation began. We get this everywhere, siblings, okay? Shiva and Vishnu is another example. That's the Hindu Cain and Abel, Shiva and Vishnu. Although Shiva is the most worshipped entity in Hinduism, and Hindu is it's really the destroyer. Okay, everything comes paired, and you see, light can't exist without darkness, and darkness can't exist without light. Okay, everything comes paired. Otherwise, there's no context. Okay,
No context at all. It's just the way this world works. To say that this is not a binary world is to live in this world. Sure, when you get into the architecture and the physics of it, the binary law may fall away. The binary law falls away in quantum computing. But I don't think people are going to like the answers that come from going into the darkness of quantum computing. Okay, there's a spiritual dimension to that as well. There's a spiritual dimension to everything because everything in this physical reality is projected from the spiritual world. We're living a drama choreographed on the other side of life. Okay, waking up is coming to realize that, and then coming to realize why it is, and then what your role is as an awakened person. Okay, it's that simple. And there's no title, there's no job, there's no benefits, there's no dental. Okay. And if you're getting all those stuff, you're probably compromised. Okay, probably. No matter where we go, we should always lead. If the experiential unit we call a human perception cannot go there first, we shouldn't go there. Now, I understand that math can take us there, but math is a conceptual proxy that goes into the darkness and doesn't come back. The only reason we know it still exists is it occasionally sends messages back. And we get all excited like we're prisoners in a solitary cell. And after a long time of being alone, we hear tapping and scratching on the other side of the wall that sounds rhythmic enough to be an ordered communication. That's it. The dark was our first major limitation. It shut down everything we did. We slept at night and worked and moved during the day. Now cast your imagination to a time when no man-made light existed, a time when the only circle of light you could have after the sun disappeared was a fire. And imagine the courage it took to leave that circle of firelight in the middle of the night. The moon would have become our constant companion as well. Everyone would have known the cycles of the moon just as they know bus and train schedules today. A full moon might allow you to travel at night. You'd know when that moon was coming. The moon would become a symbol and a living representative of a deity. All of these simple truths exist deep within us, but they're no longer correlated to the night and the day, rather knowledge and ignorance. There's an epidemic of ignorance on the planet now, and a lot of it has to do with the way people are living. See, nature is our first teacher. It's our first guru. It's our first priest. It's our first rabbi. It's our first imam. Okay? Nature is the first and great teacher. If you don't, this is why all of the spiritual teachings are built off of nature. Okay? The good ones, anyways. Lao Tzu does a phenomenal job. The Bible, which I'm not necessarily saying is good spiritual teaching, but it also pivots off of nature. Okay? Why nature? Because it's the only object reality here. Everything else we create, the moment we create something, we corrupt it with our bias because we're not an enlightened species on whole. So there's an epidemic of ignorance on the planet. It's like human perception has been compartmentalized. It's become a node in a large human system. You are what you do, and what you do is not what you want to do. It's what you have to do to make the currency, to stay in the current of the modern world, which coincidentally is still a lunar system because we pay our bills monthly. You know the old adage that absence makes the heart grow fonder? Take a moment to imagine the absence of darkness. Imagine what it would be like to live in constant light. We wouldn't even know what light is. We wouldn't even need a reason to define it. We'd have no name for it. We'd have no appreciation of it. Imagine all the things that darkness gives us. Darkness is the mother of curiosity. Who hasn't laid on their back on a summer night while camping and looked up at the vast expanse of stars speckled across the darkness and wondered what that darkness is? See if you can remember doing that. See if you can remember the feelings that you had. Was it not those two rarefied emotions of wonder and awe? Are not wonder and awe the first cousins of curiosity? Is curiosity not one of the great movers of human beings, one of the few passive and benign motivations for investigation that we have? If you study the circumstance closely, most human motivation to examine something is fear. I'll take curiosity over fear any day. This is not to say that there is no fear in the darkness, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll save the fear for later. Now, light is birthed by darkness, so we can say that darkness is the mother of light. The stars speckle the darkness. Every star in the sky had a beginning, and darkness was waiting for it, to hold it like a mother, to suspend it in space, to frame it as the majestic thing that it is. Darkness speaks light. It celebrates light. It nurtures and sustains light. It gives light all of its meaning. Now, what is true here, the blue marble in space we call home, is true everywhere. It's part of the way the whole thing has been set up. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about temporary truths. I'm not talking about the truth of temporal things. I'm talking about the truth of eternal things. There's nothing hidden from us. The law prevents it. Okay? Remember, the devil's mandate is disclosure. This is why we're constantly getting disclosure, just not in a form that spoon feeds us. But they are meeting the requirement of disclosure. This is why everything going on the planet now, including the blatantly obvious depopulation, is being done by consent. You've given your consent whether you realize it or not, because they couldn't do it without your consent. There's nothing hidden from us. The law prevents it. Man was created to apprehend the law. These are not laws that are written down. The moment the law has to be written down, your society is lost. If it's not carried in the heart, it's meaningless. Okay? Meaningless. And then you end up with this culture of dispute and debate about the law. Everybody knows what the spirit of the law is. Thou shalt not steal means you cannot take the work and productivity of somebody else and call it yours. Bring about patent law, bring about intellectual property, all of these sorts of things into the world, and people forget, right? All of the industry that we dumped into China, including Apple with the iPhones and everything we did to build the Chinese economy, allowed them to steal all the technology. It's what they do. Now, they have other virtues that are in excess of ours. They're remarkable people. I don't want you to think for any moment that I'm putting a people down. Okay? And I'm more than fair in my treatment of Western society. But we cannot look at China and not see a thief, at least at the level of intellectual property. Okay? And that's why all those corporations were invited in, because once they're invited in, they have to turn over all their technology to the CCP. What are you building? We need to know for security reasons. Send us all your technical and functional specifications, and you have to submit it, kind of like an ISO, International Standards Organization. Now, in most countries that operate under world patent law, which is, I think, governed for the most part by the WTO, the World Trade Organization, the government will not allow reproduction or mimicking or piracy of foreign technology if they're gained access to the patents in the material. Not true in China, and not true in India. India is a big pirate country as well, which is, I guess, is fine, but aren't we living in a time of like cultural appropriation? Like we, the West, appropriated cultures? Well, technology is an aspect of our culture. And not only is it being appropriated, it's being stolen because there's international law to protect it. And yet that debate, that dialogue, it's not happening anywhere. Not happening anywhere. We'd rather talk about, trade ships going out in 1740 and things like this, and how we treated other people, how our white Christian society treated other people. But it wasn't white Christian society that was doing that. It was mainly the secret societies that were doing that. They've been behind everything, okay? East India Company, the British monarchy, everything. You're dealing with a rarefied occult culture that is not shared with the general population, okay? That's the true enemy in the West. If it can be ferreted out, what's going on now is they want to scapegoat us for their sins. They want us to pay for their sins. And they believe that through this system of tacit consent they've created, that we're going to take it for them and we're going to die for them. And that's the hope. Do you think Justin Trudeau understands what I'm saying right now? Not consciously. Probably couldn't articulate it. He's too stupid. The guy's a moron. Okay, you're dealing with a sex addicted pedophile, probably ritually abused child, if you know anything about the Trudeau line, and you're dealing with basically some kind of MK Ultra puppet in Justin Trudeau, not a normal human being. Okay, neither is Macron. You know, why are all these freaks married, interested in trannies? Okay, you got Macron now. You got everybody knows about Michelle Obama. Okay, and I'm not saying anything about this. If that's where you find union compatibility and you can open your heart and be affectionate with another living thing, all the power to you, man. Some people can't even do it with a human being. They can only express love with an animal, their pet or something. They're so damaged. So, I mean, if that's your thing, I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with it. I think foisting it on children is pretty demonic and part of a societal collapse system. Okay, so for that I condemn you, and everybody watching this condemns you. Okay, who understands what's going on? You are condemned. Okay, nothing can rationalize what's going on here. You have condemned yourselves. But you probably don't believe that in your satanic Luciferian drunkenness, your worship of Baphomet, your ritual culture, all the distractions, the high energy influxes that come through the dark rituals, your commiseration with dark entities. You may have convinced yourself you're invulnerable. You're not. And what's in store for you is so disturbing, I dare not speak it aloud. Okay? When the law is lost, you're living in a dark age, but there we go again, manipulating darkness, maligning darkness, okay? The heart is the connection with the law. We weren't created to study the law, we were created to be the law. When the law is lost, you're living in a dark age, okay? You see how insidious that is? So let's rephrase. This happens in ages where the inner light of knowledge is lost within us as a species. But remember everything that's been said. There's nothing random here. Okay, there's nothing random on this physical plane. It may seem random, but that's just a failure of consciousness. You're not perceiving correctly. You don't have all the pieces. You don't have all the information. You don't have all the insight. You haven't looked behind the curtain. Okay? We go through these ages and periods because they're part of the cycles down here. The devil isn't making us do it. Okay? We're probably coming to do. We're going to have to pay our dues on everything we owe, but the devil's not making us do it. Now, we're fascinated with darkness. Darkness is the greatest relationship that human beings have. We are admonished not to look at the darkness. The challenge lies in the fact that in our current reality, all the information is hidden in the darkness. It's just sitting there as a fact. If we came into creation, do you not think it was to study creation? If not study creation, then why? Why give us this level of sentience? Why give us this level of self-awareness? Why give us this incredible inner life that can turn on us and attack us and destroy us? Again, call it mental health, call it demonic oppression, okay? But every time that darkness comes into your life, you've done something. It's a spiritual lesson for you. You don't need a priest. You don't need the Roman rites. You don't need any of these idiots on YouTube, okay? These Christian idiots. And that's what they are. They're idiots, okay? Don't know what they're talking about. Not a clue. But again, the Catholic Church is one of the top 5 wealthiest institutions on the planet. Okay? So that's why they do it. And don't forget the vow of poverty. Vow of poverty. The Catholic Church is one of the richest institutions in the world, comprised of a bunch of celibate men who have nobody to inherit their wealth. One of the top 5 richest institutions in the world, vow of poverty. What are they doing with all the wealth? What are they doing? What do they need it for? Right? If we came into creation, do you not think it was to study creation? Again, I'll ask the same question. So we're given this heightened consciousness above nature for why? To torture ourselves? Because we don't need it. When you look at what it does to us, we'd be better off just with the animal instincts, living an instinctual life, enjoying what little love we could when we procreate and we enjoy our children, our offspring, our litter, if we're a mammal, right? You don't have to worry about anything, and then you just live your life and you fulfill your function, and boom, something comes in and kills you when you're too old and too weak to defend yourself, okay? But you never really worry about it coming, okay? So you got to ask, I mean, why is there this incredible heightened awareness in human beings? Why did nature create human beings? Okay, and going back to the Taoist 7 orifices above the neck, we know we're part of this creational pattern. We know we're not an aberration. Spiritually, we may be an aberration. We may live above nature. But to come into this reality, this 3D reality, we need an operating system. We need hardware, and the body is the hardware. It hosts the human vibration, which is much higher than anything else. Okay? But some paths still believe in transmigration. Okay? Some paths on the planet still believe in transmigration. So even after having a human life, it is possible to screw up so badly that you have to go be a dog 5 times or something else. Okay? And it's all about the service of this reality. Okay? Is it interesting to notice at this point, or to note at this point, that the people of high consciousness in all of our religious traditions turn to unconditional service? Unconditional service is the universal binding agent of all spirituality and religion on this planet at its highest expression. At its lowest expression, it's Gaza, it's Israel, it's the Third Temple of Solomon, it's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it's absolutism because it's in this book. Never trust a book over your own internal spiritual direction, ever. The books are just meant to motivate you to commence an internal life, whether it be prayer, meditation, or some other form of spiritual exercise that amplifies your understanding of consciousness. That's it. I think that's enough for today. This devil chapter is 7,000 words. There's a lot of information in it. Do yourself a favor, get a copy of the book, The Devil and Us, A Memoir of You and Me by Bruce McDonald. This has been the Talamanca Review for Sunday, the 21st of April. I'm Bruce McDonald. Have a great day.